pat answer that we all, it depends on your objectives, right? So an example at Breaking Point, if anyone's ever lived through the life cycle of a startup, I've done that many times over now. Your initial efforts are toward branding and credibility and just sort of building awareness of what you're doing. And then that evolves over time to be more focused on the efficiency of your pipeline. And of course, your objectives and your measures for success map to that evolution. So I have a dashboard that's evolving over time at Breaking Point. Initially, it started out with just very gross numbers, very high-level numbers like web traffic. Where's our web traffic coming from? Is web traffic up and to the right? What types of content are resonating? Because a lot of that early stage social media work that you're doing is about finding out what your audience cares about. Who is your audience? Where are they hanging out? What content are you providing to them that's resonating? And so most of my early analytics were just, who's visiting what part of our website? What are they downloading most often? Which blog posts resonate better with them? So raw numbers like that. Now what we've done since then is over the last year, since that has been growing very rapidly, we've evolved to a little bit more interesting metrics for the business. We're focused on efficiency. So how many marketing qualified leads is all this web traffic generating? How many people are converting? How quickly are they converting through the funnel? And measures like that.
One of the things that's interesting, I think the topic that was addressed a little bit this morning, there's all these different sets of metrics. So there's metrics, that we're, as marketers, we're really familiar with lead gen and conversion tracking and that sort of thing. But the social media doesn't really lend itself immediately to some of those metrics. So Ian, what kind of, can you help us kind of look at the difference between web marketing and social media, and like what metrics are important, and why should we focus on social media? Because the answer to the problem.
So I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. I mean, one of the reasons that social media is attractive is one of the same reasons that search engine optimization is attractive. Sure. So one of the reasons social media as a marketing channel is effective and is interesting to marketers is it's both highly cost effective, like SEO, and it should, if you're doing it correctly, or once you get to the point that you evolve to you're doing it correctly, it should also be generating highly qualified traffic. So if you think about those two things, you've got volume, you've got low cost, and you've also got highly qualified traffic. Those are the three things you should be going for. So the measurement program you're putting in place needs to help you understand if you're generating the volume, if it is highly qualified volume, and what's it actually taking for you to get there. And I think where people often underestimate in terms of the costs is they start to look at, what are the costs of the software applications that they're using. And they're not thinking about what's the human cost, because there's all these other things you could be doing in your organization that you're not taking on because you're focusing on some of these social marketing engagements. I tend to be a little bit of a skeptic around social media. I think ultimately that's where people are going to have to go to be successful. But I think just because you're doing social media doesn't mean you're actually doing it well, or actually doing it well and achieving your goals as a company.
Good, thanks. One metric that people like to talk about is stickiness for your website, Michael. It seems like having your own community is like the holy grail of stickiness. It's like the customers come in and they never leave. So is it better to try to build it yourself, or is it better to try to participate in the LinkedIn's and Twitter's, or is it both and?
Yeah, well, as a provider of online community platform technology, I have to say that in all cases, it makes sense to build your own. Obviously, nobody would disagree with that. No, it depends, and the answer, I think the answers that we're going to hear to questions that are being asked, have already been asked, will be asked. It depends. There are not just general sweeping, this is how it is all the time. This is, you do have to go through a few steps of analysis to figure out what you should really be doing in social media as it pertains to your business. So as it relates to online communities, should you be leveraging existing, or should you be building your own? It depends on what you So, for example, are you taking more of a campaign type approach with your customers and your prospects? Or are you looking to engage with them on an ongoing basis over the long haul? Is it important to tailor something specific to your customers? Are they picky? Or does that not really matter? Can they work with something that's essentially out of the box that Facebook is providing? How valuable is the data? We talk about analytics and the data and what's happening. Obviously, the more that you're leveraging a third-party provider, the less control and access to what's really happening there you have. So if the data is more important, if your customers acquire more of, or your audience, let's talk about customers, but if your audience tends to be pickier and they're looking for a tailored type of approach, and if you're looking to engage with them on a repeated basis over the long haul, then those are the types of, if the answer is yes, then that's where creating your own type of online community tends to make sense. And if you do it and you do it well, we're talking about bringing it back to stickiness. There's a statistic that was out there that online when people go on to certain methods, they tend to spend about 27 minutes and 56 seconds. This is way back when, and this is from an analysis of LinkedIn, MySpace, Facebook. And when you look at your normal content-based websites, it's less than half of that amount. So if you can do it and you can do it well, the engagement value is that much higher, and so you can see some good results.
The follow-up question I would have on that is about this, comparing metrics. So based on your experience with your customers, is that the key metric that they're saying that really makes a difference to them to help justify the investment in time and effort?
Yeah. So the metrics part of it is, again, we're going to use the word it depends. You've got two types of activities, in my opinion, I think, that happen on communities. You have what I call general activity, and you have what's value activity. I just wrote an article in Communications World that's in this month's edition online about this. But there are some things that, there's some metrics that cross all communities that people are going to want to keep an eye on, just to benchmark essentially how is the community's level of activity performing versus others, and these are the reports that I need, these are the stats that I need to have to give to my executives. So those are things like page views in the community, these are number of members added, number of active members, page views per session, so you can start to look at the engagement amount. But then, what really drives ROI, those are just your numbers. But does it make sense for your business, and is it making sense for your business? Is where you get down to the metrics of, what are the business goals? So if this is a community that is for customers, then you have to ask yourself, what are the goals? Am I trying to acquire new customers? Am I trying to better retain my existing customers? Am I trying to reduce customer support costs? Or am I just a media play and I want to generate as many pages as I can because it's advertising? Even in that situation, that's not really the end metric, because you're going after revenue, so you have to look at what's my CPM rate. So you have to figure out, as